Hi, everybody. I wanted to take a minute to talk to you about the importance of an isometric grid in drawing infographics. So, isometric drawing is an engineering drafting technique that shows you kind of a perfected view of a three-dimensional object. And it takes a very particular grid to be able to draw something that has symmetry on three sides at the same time. Most objects, especially in reality, they tend to have a taper or some sort of perspective applied to them. But this kind of drawing has the perspective removed. So what you see is, again, that perfected shape. And you run into this a lot, more than you might realize. Of course, video games back in the day were all based on isometric grids. Without the aid of actual three-dimensional drawing, computers couldn't handle it. They would create isometric renderings of different characters and objects and environments. Warcraft is one of those famous ones that used it a lot. Of course, there are a lot of games today on your phone that do this to kind of simplify the rendering time for the gameplay. So isometric grids are everywhere. When you look at what it can be done with drawing in general, just for illustration purposes, you can see how it can be used for a variety of things. And it gives you that nice, crisp, clean, perfected view of an environment. And when it comes to an infographic, it creates a nice uniform view for the objects displayed in the infographic. A lot of times you'll see objects rendered like this where all the angles are parallel with one another. The shapes are consistent in size. And again, that's because they were drawn using that isometric grid. Here's another one. You've got forklifts and trucks and a building and all these diagrams, and it creates a nice spacing for your different objects. So if you're trying to show a workflow or draw a map or create some sort of environment rendering, by adding that that type of drawing, it makes it more interesting. So unfortunately, at least I'm not aware of any drawing program like Illustrator that already has a isometric grid embedded in it. So I'll be sharing with you guys this grid, which is created through drawing different lines in a geometric, precise way. And what we want to do is make sure that we've got it snapped to point, which it is. So if I come back here with my drawing tool and I start drawing, what I'm going to be doing is aligning my shape to that grid. And let's say I'm trying to create a box. Let me change the color here so it's a little more obvious what I'm doing. So maybe I'll pick like a light blue or something. And then I draw another side of that box. And so I start tracing these diagonal lines. And maybe I select a brighter color for this one. And then this one, I'll come here and kind of draw that little third side of that box. And if I hide the grid, you can kind of see, oh, they're in the background there. So again, by having that little grid, it's a useful tool for being able to draw those precise three-dimensional objects. And it just takes a little time, but you can create the object you need to draw. And what's nice, especially about this kind of grid, is you can get away with drawing one object and reusing it. So let's say I was using these blocks in my infographic for one reason or another. I could draw one and then reuse it and repeat it and use that grid to space them out so that they lay out together in that format. So want to make sure that you guys had that and understood how that's different than a standard straight up and down grid. Objects like this do not work when you show and use a normal grid. These angles are not the same. when you try to draw diagonal lines through a standard grid, it doesn't work as well. So you really have to use this. We turn off the normal grid so you can see it. You really have to use this, this diagonal line created on the isometric grid. Okay, hope that helps. See you next time.